Hi, welcome to today's edition of Glen's Retro Show. Today we're going to talk about some floppy drive replacements for some classic computers. Now, the young kids may not have to know or even deal with this, but in the olden days, these were a big deal. Little 3.5-inch floppy disk drives. They started to become popular with the original Apple Mac, the Atari ST, and of course, the Amiga line of computers. And they're great. They tend to last pretty long, but they do fail, like anything else. They're mechanical. And the Amiga, of all of them, has the most difficult time for replacements. The Macintosh drives were 720K drives. The IBM PC and Atari ST were 720. But the Amiga, they squeezed a little bit more data in there to 880K on a single density and 1.76 on a high density drive. So they're very hard to come by as far as replacements. The Amiga Paula chip controlled the floppy, where the PC, most electronics was done on the floppy itself. So the Mac, the Atari ST, and the IBM, it's pretty easy to get floppy drive replacements. It's not really so for the Amiga. I mean, you can get them, but they're getting very expensive. And there are actually better solutions out there. One of them being what's called a Gotek drive, and these drives were actually originally developed for like musical keyboards, and that's what these guys are right here. You can get these anywhere from $17 to $20, and they're basically the same size as a floppy. But instead of having to have a physical floppy disk, you can use a USB thumb drive. You put all your images on there, and you can select the disks. Now, there already has been two different types of software available for this device to make your Amiga be able to load what's called ADF files. One is a Cortex, which is the free version that's been out there for a while. And then there's I think it's called the HXC, which the gentleman does charge you for his firmware updates, and it's locked down pretty tight. I've always used the Cortex, but there's been issues with writing back to the drive, but for the most part for me it's worked. But there's another gentleman on the Amiga news groups that's created a new firmware. I think it's called FlashFloppy. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to talk about how we're going to get this Gotek drive installed with that new software program. And it's actually pretty neat because not only does it support this device here, and you can see there's an LED in here, and you would pick your number. So you'd have to know what disk is what number in there. But he's supporting some really new advanced features. You can actually remove this little guy here, which is the numeric pad, and replace it with this little OLED display. And that's pretty awesome. On this tiny little screen, you're going to see what disk is selected, what the disk is called, it reads the track numbers, and he's doing some other things as well, like a physical rotary switch instead of using the buttons to select your disk image, and also a drive click. People don't have the Amiga would never know this, but the Amiga had a little click where the disk tried to select and find if there was a disk in the drive. And it's actually pretty simple to update. I found a couple of solutions from, again, some of my friends on Facebook. I'll list them in the credits, of course. And let's get started. So it's not too expensive. You can use this in your Amiga, your Atari ST. As far as I know, I think it also supports the IBM PC disk images. And he's updating it pretty well. We're in version 7A at the time of this video. And once you do the initial flash update, which again is not difficult with the solution I'm going to show you, but at future updates, just put it on the SD card, press 2 buttons on the front, and it'll automatically do the updates. So without further ado, let's get this little Gotek drive set up to run some classic machine games. Let's go. Okay, so to begin this project, we'll need a couple of things. Obviously, you'll need a Gotek drive, and again, you can get this on eBay anywhere from $17 and up. You can get one that's totally unprogrammed. They do make, people are selling them programmed for the Amiga and the Atari ST already, but they'll be more expensive. Just get a simple Gotek drive, because we're going to program it ourselves. One of these little really neat tiny OLED displays. These were about anywhere from $2 to $5 depending on where you get them from. And then typically you would need one of these. This is a USB to serial device that you would connect to your Gotek to program it. And I actually had no success with this. This one might have been bad, I don't know. But it was a real pain and it didn't work, so I'm not going to use that. There's a much simpler solution. It turns out that these Goteks, the USB here can be put into a host mode, and you can very easily purchase or make your own what's called a USB-A to USB-A cable, and I'll have some instructions in a minute on how to create this. Basically, I took two USB-A connectors and just solder them together. So one's going to go into here, and then one will go into your PC to program it. So this is all we really need to get started. And obviously you'll need a USB thumb drive to start putting your software on it. But let's get started to the build. It'll only take a few minutes, and you'll have a nice new well, floppy drive replacement, and it's actually pretty neat. So let's get started. Okay, so once you get your Gotek drive, most of the work we're going to be doing is back in this area, but I take the cover off, especially if you got the new screen. You're going to have to take it off anyway, so I just take out screw 1, screw 2, screw 3, and then the cover will simply come right off. Nothing else is holding it on. You can see here's your display board. Now only the green indicator light, which is your drive access, is actually through here. Usually with the stock firmware, it doesn't use this one at all, which is just a power light. But when you do install the Flash Floppy Firmware, this will power on, and I made a small hole just to put it through as well. It's just showing that it has power. I mean, it's not necessary, but I did it. Here is your USB port. Here's your current screen, which is the 888, which normally with the Cortex or the HX firmware or HXC firmware, when you press these buttons up and down, it'll just indicate what drive number it is. If you do go for the advanced screen, which I do recommend, you'll get a lot more information out of this area. And this is all that's really involved. Now here's the floppy connector, your power connector, jumper settings, which this jumper I did have to move from my Amiga. We'll zoom in here a little bit. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. Let's try this again. Zoom in a little bit. So it comes on the S1. I set mine as S0 as the only drive, or the primary drive. If this is not your primary drive, I guess you could leave it in S1, but I did have to move it from S1 over to S0. Now here are the jumpers themselves. Now on my original board, I did solder on some pin headers on here. It looks just like this in this area, just to make it easier to work. But since I'm going to do it just this one time, you can use a paper clip, and I'll show you that in a second, to short some of these pins out to make this work. And let's go to our next screenshot. So here's what the unit looks like still inside the case. You can see here is the back end of the 888 indicator numbers, where again you could leave this on. I recommend getting the new nice screen. Okay, so you can see here again our power connectors, the jumper that I had to move over to here. What we need to do now is, in order to make this a USB host, so we can use a USB-A to USB-A cable, we need to take a paper clip. We're going to put a paper clip in this port and short over to this port here. So these two are going to get shorted, and then this one here diagonally to this one. So again, it's going to be this one and this one, then this one and this one. Once that's done and you connect USB-A to USB-A, you'll be able to program it. So you can see I just took a paper clip. You don't have to solder anything in. It's a good enough connector for now. Just bend it and put it in these two spots here. That's the first part of the getting it ready to be programmed with the firmware. And sorry, it's a little blurry, but you can see the second one. So you're going to go this one into this one, then here diagonally down to this one. Once this is done, it's going to allow it to be programmed and take 5 volts from the USB-A port. And that's what this one's doing here, I believe. This one is doing the 5 volts for the USB-A, and this is just putting it into programming mode. Here's another shot. You can see again, one in, one in, one in diagonally to this one. So you should have 2 open holes down here and then 3 here, almost like a little Tetris game, which is a fun game, by the way. And again, another picture, a little bit clearer. And again, it's just a paper clip. You can use anything metal, as long as you can short those pins for a few minutes. That's all you need to do. And here is basically 2 USB-A cables I just cut and I resoldered on. You just need to make sure that both are set up exactly the same. So you can see the pins in here, so they're both facing the same way. Red is your first, white, green, and black, which means this one has to be red, white, green, and black. They have to be wired exactly the same. If you don't, the cable is not going to work. You can buy these pre-made, but if you have I'm sure you have a bunch of these USB cables lying around. Just chop off the end of one and just make sure that these are all colored correctly. So I did bend these up just to make sure they were. Initially, this one I did backwards. I had the positive here and the ground here. It's not a big deal, it just didn't work because it wasn't getting power. The power was going to ground, the ground was going to power. So I just moved them around, and it worked fine. Okay, so the first thing you'll do is take one of your USB-A connectors. You're going to put it into this connector here. Again, after you have your two spots here properly shorted out. So you're going to plug this in here to this side so it's ready to be programmed. So you're going to put it right in just like that. And then on your computer side, you're going to plug the other USB-A cable into the USB-A port. Like so. Once that's done, depending on what version of Windows you have, it may recognize it. If it does not, when you install the software from the manufacturer, you can install the driver at that point. But in my machine is running Windows 8, 8.1 actually. It recognized it just fine. The other thing I needed to do was I did need to make a cable. I had an old IBM PC floppy cable. You can see it is twisted, which is needed for drive A on an IBM drive, but the Amiga doesn't like that. So all I did was I pried it open with a screwdriver and took the twist, and I took that twist out. And once the twist is out, it'll work as an Amiga drive cable. Okay, so once your Gotek is connected to your computer via USB-A to USB host cable, you do need to install one program to do the initial bootloader install. Once this is done, this step is completed, additional firmware upgrades to FlashFloppy can be done just via holding down the two front buttons on your Gotek, which I'll show you a little bit later, and installing it via a USB stick. But the initial bootloader has to be installed in this fashion. So we need to go to this website right here and go to Get Software. I'll have the link of this down below in my comments area. And you want to install this program right here. So you have to get software. When you do, it's going to ask you for your email address. They won't give you the download until you do that, but it's okay. You're going to need this program. Once that's all done and installed, this is what you're going to have here. You're going to have two programs. The DFU file manager, which you have to run first, and then the DFU SE demo, which we'll use second. So initially we're going to open this, but before we get there, I'm getting ahead of myself, we do need FlashFloppy itself. So the first thing you want to go to is go to this address. Again, it'll be down in my comments area, and you can download the latest version, which is version 0.7.0.a. However, I'm going to install actually an older version, the version 6, via this method, so I can show you how easy it is to upgrade to version 7 via a USB stick. But just click on this, download it, and again, he's very good at updating. If you're on the on Facebook, in the Amiga forums, he's very active in there, and this is a fantastic thing he's doing right here. It's really got a lot of features in here. I'm hoping he's going to add high density support. Right now, all the Goteks only do either 720 or 880K discs. I'm hoping at some point we'll get high density support, because I do have some images of some high density discs that I want to look at again that I haven't seen in ages. But so once you download the file, you have your FlashFloppy, you have version 6.3 and then the version 7a. So we're going to start with this one here. So the first thing I have to do is go into the DFU file manager. So I want to generate a DFU from file from S19 hex or bin files, and I'm going to do S19 hex. It's going to ask me where it is. I'm going to go to the desktop and find my folder, which we're going to do this version right here, and here it is. So I have my image in here. All I need to do now is select a target name. I'm going to call this Gotek Amiga. Oop, if I can spell it right. There we go. And just hit generate. It's going to ask me where I want to put it. And to make it easy for myself, I'm going to throw it right on the desktop. And give it a file name again. I'll call it Amiga Gotek. And it's just that simple. And here's the file right here. Once that's done, I can cancel out of this. Next, I want to go to the DFU SE demo. Now it's going to ask, it's going to say your device in read protected mode. Do you want to remove this? Yes. Just give it a few seconds to reconnect via the USB host. And we're reconnected. So it's saying your device was plugged in DFU mode, so the DFU mode is valid, blah, 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 continue. Okay, now we're going to go into the DFU SE demo. We can see our device is seen in the USB host mode. Make sure we're going to go to our internal flash. Now we're going to choose the file we created before, and here it is, Amiga Gotek. Select open, and all we need to do is hit upgrade. So we'll say it's correctly uploaded, hit upgrade, and we're going to say yes. It's erasing. And now it's programming. And it says it was successful. So we can quit out of here, close this up, disconnect our device, and now we're going to plug it into our Amiga computer and try and fire it up. Okay, so we've now programmed our firmware on our device. The next thing we want to work on is, in this case, I'm going to be removing the 888 display panel and putting in a nice OLED panel. So the first thing we're going to do is work on this area. We're going to pull these cables off. We do need to put them in a different position. So I just took the entire mechanism out of the plastic just so you guys can see it a little bit better. And my friend Aaron, I'll put his information down below. He's the one who gave me this information, how to hook up this display. He's another good guy. The Amiga community and actually all of the homebrew community, they're all very helpful. So you can see how these cables are connected right now. And we don't care about this, just pull these all off because it's going to be going on a different way. So you can see we took off the 888, and we're going to pull this off from here as well. And you can see we changed their orientations. If you look back here, the cable was going on top and bottom. Now we're going to change that. So one of the cables is going to be going, you see there's one metal pin. The next metal pin, you're going to put it on so the yellow is on top. You can see the yellow's on top here. So you follow this across here, you can see the yellow wire is going to go all the way up to the top pin on the OLED display. The bottom is blue, and that is going to the bottom, or pin 2 of the OLED display. Now on the last pin, it's also yellow on top. You need to twist your cable, so yellow is now on the bottom and blue is on the top. This is very important. My friend Aaron, he had done it wrong initially and he actually fried the display. But as long as you go here with yellow on top, then go to the top pin being yellow, but then blue, blue, yellow, so the opposite. Just look at this picture here and you won't get it wrong. Just hold the display in this same fashion and this will go just fine, and this display will look great. Then you can put everything back in your case. Now what you will have to do is you'll have to cut the display area out a little bit, but it's not too difficult. Okay, so updating the new firmware with the new version of FlashFloppy on these is very easy. On the front of your Gotek drive, you can see there are two little buttons here, and these are normally used to go up in disk number, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, then 3, 2, 1. So that's what they're normally used for. But what you're going to do is you're going to power on your computer system holding both these buttons in at the same time. So both buttons are depressed. By doing that, it tells the firmware that we already loaded initially with the little jumpers here to say, look on here for a new firmware version, and when you let go of the two buttons, it'll load it. So we'll try it right now. I'm going to press both buttons in, best I can with one hand. So both buttons depressed. I'm going to turn on my Amiga, and it says right on the screen, you can see it, at least I hope it focuses. I'm trying to get it to focus. It says FF Update Flash. Now I currently have version 0.7.2.a on here, but when you release both buttons, that's it. That quick little programming, it just did a flash. And that's all you need to do. So again, it takes a little time with the two jumpers and using the USB-A cable to get this firmware updated initially with the Flash Floppy firmware, but after that, you just put the firmware directly on your USB drive, hold down both buttons, and that's it. So each new version of the Flash Floppy will update very easily inside your machine. And it's so far been really, really good. It's been playing everything I've thrown at it, and he's been updating the firmware pretty regularly. I think usually like once a week you see an update. But again, there's no guarantees, but he seems to be pretty good. And the best part is this screen. I'm really enjoying it. And you can see here, when you first boot it up, your computer, you boot with the Auto HFE, which brings you to a internal select screen, which you have over here. And you can use your joystick to pick which disks go into which slot. It also tells you the firmware version. I'm running version 7.2.A, and the FlashFloppy selector program 6.2A. I have not upgraded that. But you can go here, pick all the programs that you want, and you have to press F10 on your keyboard to save the selections. Once you do that, you reboot it, and then over here you can see by pressing the buttons you can change which disk is being loaded. Amiga System Task. Here is a public domain program I have installed here. Data Storm, Revenge of Defender, Defender 2, Sword of Sudan, just by pressing the buttons here. Okay, you can see here, there's a display. And my SD card is being read. We have a green indicator light, which is hard drive activity, and the red indicator light for power. And that's it. And actually I have two of these. I have this one right here, which is going to be built internally. It's going into my internal slot in my Ultimate Amiga 500, but I also have another one that I use for external. You can see I've already cut a hole here for the display, and this Flash Floppy is just excellent. I would definitely recommend anyone with an Amiga or an Atari ST to definitely get one of these. And definitely put the Flash Floppy on here and get one of these nice little displays. You can see it's given the title. It'll scroll all the way across, the track and the sector that's on there, and which disk is loaded currently. And he's even supporting now like a rotary dial instead of pressing the buttons. You would turn the dial to select your program. He also supports a small piezo speaker to simulate the floppy drive sounds. And he also has another button I haven't put on yet where you can change the disks by like eject the disk. So he's doing a lot of really good things with it. And let's just try and put something in here. Let's go to let's see what we got here. I'll put in Battle Squadron. So we have Battle Squadron selected here, and I'm just going to reboot my machine. And we're going to load our game. I got to continue past that. There we go. And there it is. That little screen on there is really, really nice. So the video you just saw was my second Gotek, which I'm going to use internally in my Ultimate Amiga Tower. Originally I made this one here out of my external Gotek using a backpack IBM drive, and I already cut the display out, as you can see there, for the display. And this will be used for my Amiga 500 and my Amiga 1200 and so forth. The one I just created will go internally into my Amiga Tower, but you can see here when you cut the hole open for the display, I used a little hot glue on the back of it just to hold it in place. So far I'm finding Flash Floppy to be excellent, and I highly recommend it to anyone who has a Gotek drive with an Amiga, AMSTRAD, or an Atari ST. I think you'll really will enjoy this firmware. The Gotek drives themselves are inexpensive. The OLED display is very inexpensive. The ability to flash it with a USB-A cable is very inexpensive. So there's really no reason not to do it. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video, and game on.
I want him in the games until he dies playing. Acknowledge.
Sit, Blue Blue, sit. Good dog.